much. Thank you so much, Andrew. I don't see how you can say you weren't creative talking about the Order of the Knights of Malta. I think that's a fantastic idea. Last but not least, let me call up Ian Dunlop. We've heard from Ian Dunlop earlier during the discussion on Copenhagen. Ian's from Australia. He spent a lot of time on the other side of the fence, as it were, in the oil and gas industry and coal industry, and he was part of the workshop focusing on how do you get clean energy to the poor? When will they join the table? Ian.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to summarize our workshop's position. I hope my voice holds out. I spent too long in hotel rooms in air conditioning in the last month or so, regrettably. I'm standing in for our chairman, who unfortunately can't be here this afternoon. And we had a series of very complimentary papers, I think, to start off with. First, from the chairman on the work that the Energy and Resource Institute in India is doing on the sustainable energy for the poor, particularly focused on the ideas of Schumacher on appropriate technologies, not going for the very high technology solutions, but very much ones that work at a practical day-to-day level. Steve Papermaster from the US then gave a very interesting summary of what's going on in the US-China Clean Energy Cooperation Framework, where a lot of very practical work is happening on bringing the same sort of very practical solutions on the ground in a bottom-up sense, and making very big, very rapid change, I think, to the way in which a lot of Chinese communities are performing, not just in the rural context, but also in the rapid urbanization of China, which, of course, is one of the biggest problems for energy probably in the world. Sven Teske then gave us an excellent overview of the Greenpeace Energy Revolution work, the scenario concepts that are really looking at the way in which a renewable energy world could actually be developed in practice, and demonstrating, I think, very conclusively that a lot of the problems that are often associated with renewable energy, that it can't in fact provide the baseload requirements we need, are in fact misleading, and you can indeed create a total energy framework within also a realistic time frame. Paul Engberg Pedersen then gave the benefit of his wide experience in terms of the way in which aid really operates in the day-to-day sense, and made I think, the very appropriate distinction between the poor who really are facing continuing multiple crises and are not able to take them one by one. They're really faced with a whole lot converging simultaneously. And those a little bit higher up the economic tree who in fact can separate the crises and tackle them sequentially. In the first case, I think he made the point that the only way to handle that is actually through aid. The market frameworks and commercial frameworks will not operate in those conditions. My own contribution was particularly in the context of the need to look at the integrated problem that Kumi was referring to in the previous session, that this is not just about climate change in isolation in its separate silo. You have actually got to look at the total sustainability of the global system at the present time and humanity. And you do have the convergence of not just the question of the peaking of global oil supply, which in my view we are either at or very close to, climate change, water and food shortages, and indeed the financial crisis, all of which are interrelated. The problem, of course, with that is that it is the poor, the poorest of the poor, who really get impacted by this convergence. And the only way we're really going to get out of it is, in fact, if we look at the integrated problem and provide holistic solutions. Now, within that, whilst you have to look at the integrated problem, the individual solutions will vary depending on region and locality, and therefore have to be tailored to the particular circumstances. I think the particularly important aspect of the range of discussions we had is the need for a combination of both bottom-up, very decentralized solutions where there really is identification and commitment with the local communities, and at the same time the overall top-down framework, policy framework, which provides for the types of support to enable that top-down, that bottom-up arrangement to actually function properly. I think we all agreed that in the context of the financing side of this, the money is not really the issue. The really poor, the problems of the really poor can actually be handled with relatively small amounts of money compared with the types of changes and delivery of finance we've seen in recent months in the financial crisis. The problem, of course, is that this is a problem that hasn't been recognised. It's got really ignored in the overall macroeconomic, macropolitics debate of climate change, whereas it is actually one of the most pressing problems we have, because if we don't address the sustainable energy for the poorest of the poor, the problems of failed states, and all of the health and other issues I think that have been referred to already will only compound and will eventually reverberate on all of us. So I think the conclusions of where we got to is that the solutions are in fact available. The technology is fairly well defined. No doubt there will be a lot of other new technologies which may be relevant, which will enable the developing world and the poor to actually leapfrog the developed world if they're handled the right way. The really critical factor is that the convergence of the decline in potential energy or oil supply, which could possibly be of the order of 25 to 50% by 2030, combined with climate change, is really going to impact on the poor in an enormous way, and it only underlines the fact that there is a great urgency, a far greater urgency than I believe we're still recognising in these discussions, to get on and put in place realistic solutions. So we came back indeed to talking about the concept of an emergency approach and the whole concept of a war footing, which I think we've talked about earlier this afternoon. It's not a particularly good analogy, but it is actually the sort of change, that is the way, the sort of change, the transformation is going to be needed. The components are basically all there. It's now a matter of assembling the will to actually make it happen. And that way I think we will find the solution to sustainable energy for the poor. Thank you very much, and apologies for my voice.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you for stepping in as well, as Rajendra Pachauri couldn't be with us. Practical ideas and philosophical ideas, and this really is the heart of the work that's been going on over the last couple of days here at the forum. You can see that these discussions have been very detailed. They have been at two levels, conceptual and practical. Alas, we could only hear from our various reporters in summary. There's so much more. They've all made reports that they've written up, and they are there for all of us to share, to think about, and to continue this debate. You just have to look on the website of the GHF, so please do check them out.